I think 100 Thieves are very, very... they haven't shown the results compared to their former self. Obviously, being that Steel got dropped and Nitro moved on to a different game. But I think having so much stature and then dropping off so much is concerning. As well as 2 weeks ago, we dropped like two members. And then we just picked up two members in the middle of like a whole tournament. I think they're trying to find results fast.
Yeah, no,
and they're just booting people, and it's become a meme at this point.
Yeah,
but
it's
like,
a little weird.
Yeah.
It's really interesting too because you look back to Masters 2 in Berlin. Right before Masters 3, they decide to drop Steel and take on Boy, which is a head-scratching move to say the least. Because think about it, 100 Thieves, along with Sentinels last year, they were like the model of consistency for the top-tier teams. And then all of a sudden, you don't really perform as well on the main stage, but you do come with an insane 12-4 comeback against what would be the eventual champions Ascend. But in the midst of that, you're thinking, okay, Steel has kind of run out of ideas, so let's drop him. Let's have Nitro kind of take over. But it really didn't work out. I mean, hindsight obviously is 2020 vision, but at the same time, you're looking at it, you're like, yo, why? It takes time for chemistry to build. And maybe Nitro was better suited as a mid-game caller than an actual full-fledged IGL. Maybe that's what Nitro was for, is just to kind of be there when Steel doesn't have anything. Which threw 100 Thieves off through a loop. They decided to put Nitro onto Jet because he had that insane Breeze performance, but it didn't really work out. Because there's only like a few people in the world that can Jet at the high level and then IGL at the high level. You have, obviously Shazam who could do that. But honestly, it didn't make sense to me. Like, what do you think would be the reason to make that move so fast, so sudden before No, it wasn't Master Series. LCQ, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Before LCQ,
Horizon.
Why? Like, what do you think? Like, I know you said it, but like, what's the rationale behind that?
You know what I think it is? I think it's because they couldn't adapt to... I mean, this Valorant game compared to Counter-Strike, you have stuff based on agents and their abilities as opposed to like lineups and like, I don't know what else you can compare to Counter-Strike. But this game is always changing, and from what I saw, like, I watched every 100 Thieves game. Their rosters, I mean, their lineups in terms of agents, they weren't able to adapt to what was new. It wasn't until that we finally picked up... I mean, Echoes wasn't that good, but like we finally have a good Astra in JC Stanny.
Yes.
We're employing Chamber now, who I feel like in previous iterations probably maybe not have gone, which he does seem like a Steel type of agent, but Steel is no longer a member, obviously. KO now with what's it called, Bang. So I feel like back then, I just feel like the players couldn't adapt to the changing of the tide when it came to agents, and I think that's what happened.
But that was like right before the meta started really shifting towards Astra and all that. Just still, like, why would you? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I guess the whole premise or the whole issue with 100 Thieves Valorant has to come to management. Like, yes, you lose 13-0 to probably the best team in North America right now, but that was one map out of the third one of a best of 3. It's embarrassing, but like...
Well, I guess fun fact, compared to some other orgs, I don't know about other orgs, but just me personally, for 100 Thieves, the management comes down to just the players. So this was a decision made by Hiko, Ethan, and Asuna to be like, all right, so we're not gelling with Hunter, what's his... Oh, Baby J and Echoes, so let's just drop him. So obviously you don't have like a bigger figure overseeing everything, you just have players in the zone as of someone from an outside perspective looking at it, But
don't you think that'd be just a tilt factor then?
Yeah,
they just
exactly.
Get super tilted and they're just like, fuck you guys.
Which is definitely like a part of their downfall, that they don't have no one like actually watching over them. It's just them watching themselves.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like Hiko's probably the grizzled vet, if you would. But I mean, Ethan is still fairly young. He was poached from Counter-Strike in his very early years of CS play.
Yeah.
Asuna, who grew up with this game, who's still not even a 20-year-old yet, just... Can you really trust the decision making, such crucial decision making to people like that? It's
100 Thieves are money bags, but I guess they have no money to hire a GM now.
It's like,
they have a GM in League who's doing a pretty decent job, but yeah, I guess they have no money bags to invest in a Valorant GM right now.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
But I mean, coming up ahead, we have a big matchup with Xset, and then after that, who's the last guy? Oh, EG, Evil Geniuses. So who knows? We'll see from there at the time of this recording. But I I guess just to wrap up this, my side of who are the underdogs, I guess to wrap up, at the end of this, whether they don't come out of the playoffs, I actually feel like this iteration right now of 100 Thieves is pretty decent. But it's definitely not going to live up to the Steel Nitro and OG.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, those are just so much experience behind their belt.
Yeah.
And what's it called? Like Bang has shown some flashes with TSM.
100%.
JC Stanley has been around the Valorant community for a while. So,
yeah.
I mean, if you give the time, I think they've learned from this mistake to just actually give time to the players to gel and create a new team. Then they'll probably move forward. But I mean, speaking of which, sometimes time doesn't really do. Sometimes time will revert back to you. Like even if you give time for players to gel, sometimes if you stay together too long, you might not get the results. And I think that's what I'm seeing with the team that I'm personally kind of disappointed with. It's Rise. Mm-hmm. So Rise has showed a strong LCQ. They started off the year absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And then they start off the VCT close qualifiers or the VCT close season, the Challengers won, with a strong performance against Optic. So, Envy kind of coming off the rails a little bit at the beginning of the year. Now they're starting to find their footing, which is good. Or now Optic Gaming, but now Rise, when you take a look at probably some of the most talented individual players on our Valorant team right now, and I'm namely talking about Derek.
Yeah, that guy is sick.
That guy is an absolute... This guy, every time he Hunter's Fury, he gets a kill.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually kind of insane. Even if he blind... Like, I was watching this play. Blind, coming from CT, down hookah. Sorry, not down hookah. Down U-Haul. Yeah. Just blind ults. He gets one. So, Derek is just... Some of these Overwatch players are so...
That guy's also a ranked demon. Every time I watch Tarek or like my usual go-to Valorant streamers, Derek is always on their team or the other teams. That guy grinds this game.
Yeah, that guy does grind this game, and it does show. The results are showing.
Yeah, of course.
And then you have, obviously one of the better echelon jets in Mr. Shanky himself. You also have Neptune, who's a really, really solid performer. But I mean, this team had some strong showings, and now it's kind of falling off the rails with their last, again, at this time of recording, their last loss coming against Sentinels at a 1-2, which is a little bit better than what they have been producing in previous matches. Like before that, they were down 0-2 against Knights. And the thing is, on Haven, they were up, I think it was 7-1 against Knights. And then they let Knights come. Think about this Valorant community right now. So there's so many up-and-coming players that will surprise you. So we have teams like we mentioned, Guard.
Yeah,
V1 is kind of having a revelation right now from their last major success, which was Masters 1 in Reykjavik. So it's really refreshing to see that this competition is kind of growing and, organically speaking, just flourishing. But then it kind of takes our favorite teams and our favorite players kind of like, by surprise. We have Sentinels dropping down to an A-tier team instead of an S-tier. And then we have, Rise, who's put up strong performances, now just not doing so well. Like, they lost to V1 as well, 0-2.
I think I was actually watching Tarek's stream yesterday, and he was doing a watch party with Nate Shot, and he said he actually really likes how this esports is, because if you want to stay at the top, because of how, and we mentioned this earlier, this game is always changing, whether it's like a map buff or map change, or it's an agent buff or agent... whatever the opposite of buff is, like debuff, or a nerf. If you want to stay at the top, you have to be able to adapt to those changes.
Absolutely.
And then you just said Sentinels. I mean, we're definitely talking about Rise here, but like just an example in Sentinels, they were at the top, but now they're kind of falling from the top because they're unable to adapt to this ever so changing this game. So.
And I think to add on to that as well, the reason why Sentinels were at the top for so long, not only do they have like the godliest aimers in Shazam, Sick, and Tens, but they were actually one of the first teams, if not the first team, to establish the Astra meta.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you want to stay ahead of the game, you have to create the meta. And right now, whoever created this chamber meta is flourishing. You can see all the jets transitioning over to the chamber, a la Shanks in a couple maps. Wardell has become almost a full-time chamber at this point. So whoever's establishing that meta will kind of put you over the top in this game, and that's what's really cool. Yes, the mechanics of CS are there, but because we have so many different agents and moving parts, the game will always continue to evolve, and that's why it's so fun to see all of these, smaller organizations kind of just take the Rise to the top.
And I think, speaking of Rise, just to quickly, just last point here, I think if Rise want to succeed to where they want to be, for me in basketball terms, I don't watch much Rise, but whenever I see it, I see Shanks either he's on it or he's not on it. So for me, Shanks is a very streaky player, kind of like a J.R. Smith in basketball. If he's on it, like their team is probably, they're probably gonna succeed, and if he's not on it, then they're probably gonna tank that game. So.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Mm-hmm.